Good afternoon. So I've met Srikar and Uyai, and I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Jonathan, yeah. I'm Danika, and I'm the co-founder of Scismic. And Scismic is basically a job matching platform for scientists in the life sciences. And so what we want to do is to get you the career you deserve, and what we want for you is for you to be able to make the impact you desire within that stage. So essentially, we help mostly academic scientists kind of transition out of academia and go into industry. But the platform is definitely also applicable to industry scientists. But we help academic scientists make an impact by delivering industry jobs to you that enable you to basically use your skills and, drive that impact that you want to drive. So whether it's bring therapies to patient or just kind of expand on basic science. Oh, thank you. So who this talk is for, or who this platform is for? Basically anyone who is a life scientist, anyone in the biomedical sciences. So if you're a scientist looking for a job, if coming either from academia or you're already in industry, mostly within the early few steps, so nothing kind of director and above, anything director and below. It doesn't really matter which level of education you come from, so whether you're a bachelor's, a master's, or a PhD level scientist. And then on the flip side, basically, how we work is people post jobs on our site, and so this platform is applicable to any R&D hiring manager within company. So if you're looking to grow your team and hire scientists, this is applicable for you. Any kind of lab head or principal investigator of an academic lab, and you're looking to bring in specific skill sets into your lab, that works for you too. And then we basically try and deliver a lot of information. So I was a biomedical scientist myself, and I'll kind of go through my story in a little bit, but I've done 2 postdocs, and so I've understood the challenges that exist that basically, the lack of tools and resources for how I can find that next step and how I can start to think of how to plan that next step. So we run a lot of workshops, and we provide a lot of information to this group in terms of what are the first steps to take, how do you think about this, then how do you put them into action. So essentially the problem we're trying to solve is, on average, it takes about 4 months for a scientist to find a job. This is from when you decide that you know what you're going to look for, and you start to put those things into action. And this is because there's a severe lack of information. The process is lengthy, and I'll go through why. And oftentimes, we're not really sure as scientists coming from academia what jobs fit us best. What can we apply our skills to, and what will enable us to be impactful and therefore happy? Because a lot of us take on this role as a scientist because we want to kind of make impact in the world. And so we don't know what that looks like in industry. And so in terms of lack of information, oftentimes it's, how do I take that first step? I'm a postdoc, I'm a grad student, I'm finishing up. I understand a lot about the postdoc world and writing grants for the next step, but I don't really know a lot about what an industry job search requires or entails. Right? What type of jobs even apply to me? What can I apply for? The process is often very lengthy, and because I don't understand the types of jobs that apply for me, I tend to just go through and apply to anything that seems vaguely similar to terms that are on my CV. And that's not a very good use of time, and it's also very frustrating. It means you get a lot of no's and very few yeses, right? So you spend all this time, and you kind of build up on your frustration because you don't know what jobs fit you best. And so what we try and do is we basically build a platform with an algorithm that matches your skill sets to the skills required by various different jobs in the biotech industry. So as a scientist, it takes 15 minutes, you put in your skill sets, and then we match you to jobs that require those skill sets. So then you only see the jobs that apply to you, and okay, I'm going to focus my time and attention on these applications. And the point is that you enter a job that requires a skill set so that then you're valued by the company and you start off on a positive note. There's a lot of security. So far, compared to other job boards, we have been quite happy with our result. Over 50% of our applicants get called back, either for a phone interview or beyond. So this is validation for us that our algorithm is working quite well. And on the hiring side, people have been quite happy with how they use our site. So for kind of smaller biotechs, like Tenza is a very small startup, very promising startup, but they found this very helpful because the person the hiring manager is a scientist, has no management skills or has not done this before, and he found that the website was able to kind of guide him into understanding what skill sets he needed for his position. We also had academic lab PIs or lab heads kind of seek out specific skill sets, and this was a platform that they used that they were very happy with. But I guess kind of the topic of today is my transition from being a grad student to my 2 postdocs, and then I did a 2-year stint in biotech, and then kind of started to drive Scismic full-time this year. And so I'll kind of go through my story, but I also want to kind of give you perspective on who has built the site and who's behind this idea. So I'm a co-founder, and for me it was essential that when I came out of my 2 postdocs, so that was already like 10 years in academia, I felt I had no skill sets. I don't know what job to apply for. It was probably going to be another postdoc. That was the easiest. But that was not true. I had a lot of skill sets, and I could use it very well in my next position in biotech. So I wanted to find a way to kind of show people like us, hey, you have jobs that apply to your skill sets. For my co-founder, Elizabeth, she was a lab manager in the first lab that I did my postdoc in, and so that's where we met. And for her, she noticed a lot of people around her friends, were very, very frustrated in their roles, and she wanted to do something about that. And for our third co-founder, he's a person with physical disability, and for him, he wanted to play a part in the world of therapy. He wanted to kind of do his part, and he understood the pains of the workforce, and he wanted to make that workforce a happier, more engaged workforce, so that therapies were propelled to the clinic. So in terms of my journey, I started out in academia, just like most of you, right? So did a PhD, I did it in Australia, so it was a 4-year program. In the US, I think it's like 7 to 8 years. I did my first postdoc, I moved to Boston from Australia and said, okay, Boston was where I could, needed to be. It was high paced, it was a big challenge. I was pretty unhappy in my first postdoc. There were a lot of things wrong with it, including the fact that I didn't think much of how to pick my training environment. I just went by, here's my hero who publishes super well in all these journals and does really good science. I never asked any other question. I didn't know how much I was making until I got my first paycheck. And so there was a lot of things I didn't know as to how to select that first postdoc. And so I moved in the middle of that postdoc basically to a second postdoc because I'm like, now I know better. I'm going to do better. I'm going to not fail at my first postdoc. And in 3.5 years, I realized I've achieved some things. It wasn't, definitely was not on the way to getting my faculty position. So what do I do next? And I never thought about these things in the beginning. I thought about them on the last day of when I realized, okay, I need to do something else. It's been 3.5 years. This is my 5th year as a postdoc. I don't know what to do now. I'm not worth anything to the industry. And then kind of serendipitously, I met a guy who advertised in the newsletter for an internship for kind of assessing the market fit of an idea he had. He was another postdoc at the institution I was at. And we got to talking, and I helped him with his market research and realized I really don't want to do business. It's very interesting because of where I am right now, but at that time I was like, I don't like market research. This is not what I'd like. But we kept in touch, and then about a year into that, he basically said, okay, well, him and his co-founder are now ready to bring their technology to, they got funding, they now want to start a company around this technology, and it was very promising. It is very promising technology. So they said, since we've known you for, a year or so, do you want to be our first employee? And I said, yes. Now, these 2 individuals are friends of mine, but also they come from academia directly. They did not come from an industry setting, so we were all in the same boat. It felt fun. And I stayed within that for 2 years, and it was 3 months ago that I left that position to run this full time. So it's very, very recent. And it was a great experience, but I'll kind of go through some of the lessons I learned from that phase and how to seek out managers that I could learn something from that had a different background to me. We're not at the same level. And then 3 months ago, I decided we had reached a stage where we were, our business was building with our job matching platform, and it was time to kind of scale up our efforts and not just get it to the people around us, but really get it out there. We wanted the platform to be used by scientists. It's completely free for scientists, so it was, okay, how do we, disseminate this platform so that people find use and use it? So then I thought, okay, well, what should I kind of talk about in this session? And firstly, please ask me any question you want to ask me. I'm happy for this to be more interactive. But I thought that the important things to share about my journey were the lessons, the mistakes I had made and the lessons I had gained from them. Because for me, I know now not to make those mistakes again. There are other mistakes I have to make, but if I was kind of thinking back 5 years when I was coming into my first postdoc, I really wish I had known some of these things. So coming out of my postdocs, I had, like I said, I was very committed to science. I was very, very dedicated to my work, and I had moved countries. I settled in a new country, didn't make any friends outside the lab, like spent 14 hours a day in the lab. And the one thing I've learned is coming out of those postdocs was I didn't realize, I had kind of lost a lot of me outside the lab. I was only defined by success metrics within my science. Nothing else mattered to me anymore, and that was not healthy. So for me, coming out of those postdocs, I had to kind of build in the other aspects of my life that should be part of what defines who I am, not just my publications or my grant or whether I'm getting a faculty position or not. So my first lesson was to keep my sanity. I should have made sure I had a balanced life. Because it mattered to how I kind of coped through those years. And it mattered to how I saw myself, right? Larger metrics rather than just publication, no publication, or faculty, no faculty. The second thing is I wished during my first postdoc that I asked more questions, right? Not just went by who was my scientific hero and how well they published and how well they were funded and where they were, but what they were going to be like as a training environment for me. Right? To sit down and ask myself, what are the things you need from this postdoc? How long are you willing to spend on getting these things? And then seek out a training environment that would then provide those things to me, rather than just go with one metric again, right? To diversify my metrics. And so earlier on in kind of that postdoc phase was where we started Scismic, and the first tool we started was called Scismic Lab Seeker, and you'll find it on the URL, the website. But Scismic Lab Seeker was essentially, we were trying to build a global database of labs that were, I want to use the word evaluated, but it wasn't really evaluated. Basically, alumni and current members would kind of fill in a 30-question survey about different aspects of the lab. So PI management, funding, work-life balance, institutional policies around maternity, paternity leave, that kind of thing. In a multiple choice manner. So it's nothing you can write nasty things on. It's just you choose an option that best reflects your experience in that lab. And it was to get in an anonymous way. And that was to get other people information on what this lab was going to be like as a training environment, so they could see how they fit that. So compatibility was key, right? There were some postdocs thriving in the lab I was in, but I was not. And there was some like me who were not. And it was just a matter of how we could find that match. So that was the first tool we built. Scismic Lab Seeker. And then the third thing that was very important for me learning is you should think of your grad school and your postdoctoral kind of stint as transition phases, right? They are not permanent positions. I went in and I was like, I can do this forever. This is a lot of fun. It doesn't take me much effort to look for other things that were uncomfortable. But I spent too many years in my first postdoc, and I know people who spend way longer. And so I think now when I talk to people starting into a postdoc or starting into grad school, I say, time it. Say, these are the things I want to learn, and I want to do it within a 3-year period. I don't need to stay longer in this phase, right? There should be something else I'm going to. There should be a transition. This should not be a permanent position. And so I say, be disciplined. Kind of be proactive about your own goals and your own training environments, and then be disciplined and stick to that timeline, right? So then finished my postdoc, learned all those lessons, moved into biotech, got really excited because I was this first employee of this really cool idea, right? It was a startup. It was run by people like me who just came from academia, and it was a lot of fun. And the way I thought about it was, well, this is a fun job, and where I want to get to is I want to get into drug development and grow a career in that. So I thought this would be good in terms of letting me grow. But what I had kind of missed at that time, looking back, is kind of the second point of selecting my hiring manager. The people I worked under knew as much as I did about the field. We all came from the same phase of life, right? So I couldn't grow because they know as much as I know. Whatever new things I was learning, they were also learning at the same time. And as a boss, you can't be learning the same time your boss is learning, because then no one is setting goals that can be reached. We're all just growing in different ways. So my learning lesson from that is, now when I say go to industry, I say look at the hiring manager, look at who you're going to be working under. That person should have things that you don't know that you want to learn, and that's how you should select your position, right? So you have to be kind of proactive and a little bit smart about who you're going to work, where you're going to work. So now I say, if you want to learn managerial skills, work under someone who has been in industry, who has had that experience, right? Don't go under people who are coming from academia because they don't have management skills that are as well sharpened as the people in industry. So that was kind of a lesson from biotech, to be open-minded and to take opportunities when they present themselves, but also to be proactive in terms of understanding, again, what you want to learn from this phase and how you can set yourself up to be able to get that knowledge. And then recently, so Scismic has been something that we've done as a passion project on the side for a long time, and it's only recently that we've come in full time into this. And that's been a very big learning curve, right? As a scientist, I don't talk much to other people, right? I do a lot of work and a lot of thinking in my own head. I don't communicate as much. I don't have to, and most of the time when I do communicate, I'm very defensive. I'm trying to sell you my idea, and I'm not really open to listening necessarily to yours. That's kind of the way things tend to be. And I think the biggest lesson I've learned that has been amazing is the first point, right? To listen to other people's perspectives. So now when I talk to people, I have to understand, for them to listen to me, what they're interested in, what motivates them about this conversation, and what do they want to take home from it. And then I have to speak to that, otherwise they're not going to listen to me. And I have to do that because now I have a project to carry through, and I have investors to make sure that I deliver my promise to, and it's all on my shoulders. But that has been a great lesson, because the more I listen to other people, the more I'm able to connect with other people again, and the more we're both able to win from a situation. So be empathetic and be genuine, understand where people are coming from, which requires you to listen to what they're saying, right? Which we do not so well, I think, in academia. And then I think the best part about academia is it builds your resilience. You have to apply for grants and then get rejected 50 times and then still stand up the next morning and go in. You have to do a 2-month experiment on animals that then suddenly all just die, and then you have to start from scratch, and you have to get up and go every morning. And if you don't smile, there's no fun in all of that, right? So I think that really helped me in not looking at failures as failures. I don't give up now because people say no to me. I just say, okay, who is someone else I can talk to that might want the same things I want in a different way? So there has been, I don't regret, academia has its faults, but it also definitely has its pluses. That's why we're all in it, right? So the idea, to take the wins and the losses and to learn from the losses and to carry the wins through. And lastly, this is the team that built Scismic. So we have Elizabeth and I, this is Elizabeth right here, the huge face. But Elizabeth and I work with a team of developers who is basically from our co-founder, Danny's company. And so they have built this for us because none of us can code. We're very good at the bench, but we can't code or market or sell. So we work with a great team, really, that understands our mission and really works with us to kind of get that message out. Yeah. Any questions or anytime you want to connect, I put some info cards there about more information in the URL, but I'm also around. Please come and talk to me if you have questions or if you want to know anything.